Hello guys, welcome to my channel where interesting stories of love, communication, and empathy are told. If you're new here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Your voice matters here. Amara sat at the kitchen island, fingers dancing over a glossy bridal magazine, eyes gleaming with excitement. Her voice rose with delight as she described the cascading orchids she wanted hanging from the ceiling, the custom designer gown from Milan, and the celebrity chef she'd already messaged for a tasting session. Across from her, her father, Mr. Obina Nwankwo, calmly stirred his tea, the corners of his eyes soft but shadowed with concern. It wasn't that he didn't want to see his only daughter walk down the aisle like a queen. It was that the numbers she quoted rattled something deep in his chest. 19 million naira, Amara? He asked gently, setting his spoon down. My dear, that's not a wedding. That's an election campaign. She laughed, thinking he was joking. But when she looked up and saw his expression, kind but unwavering, her heart sank. Daddy, this is my only wedding. My dream. You always promise to give me the best, she whispered, blinking rapidly. I promised you love, stability, and wisdom, my baby, he replied. Not luxury that burns through our future. The moment hung between them. Amara clenched her fists beneath the table. She couldn't believe it. After all these years of watching her friends have lavish weddings, of waiting her turn with patience, her father was backing out. The man who once bought her a pink tricycle just because she cried in a mall now said no. He stood and walked over to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. Let's make it a beautiful, meaningful wedding. Intimate. A reflection of your love, not just your taste. His voice held the kind of wisdom only years could carve, but all Amara felt was betrayal. The days that followed were full of clipped conversations and tense silences. Her fiancé, Jide, tried to play mediator. Amara, maybe he just wants what's best, he started, but she wasn't listening. Her world had tilted. Her dream had cracked. She had grown up believing that a father's love showed in sacrifices, so why wasn't this one? Amara's mother tried, too. Your father adores you, she said, smoothing her daughter's hair like she was 5 again. He's just cautious. He has his reasons. But the caution, to Amara, felt like control. A test. A refusal to trust her with her own happiness. And that seed of resentment took root in her chest. She scrolled through Instagram that night, heartburning as she watched a former classmate post clips from a private island wedding in Seychelles. The caption read, "When Daddy says yes to forever." The comment section was flooded with heart emojis and envy. Amara slammed her phone down and sat upright. The idea came to her suddenly. A dinner. A fancy one. She would invite her father and the rest of the family under the pretense of a bonding night. Then, she'd confront him softly, but publicly. Not to embarrass him, no. Just to remind him. To shake him into action. She told her siblings it was just a treat for Amara, being generous. Her tone was cheerful enough to be convincing. Even her mother looked surprised but delighted. That's lovely, darling. We could all use a happy evening. She booked a table at Zuma Lounge, a rooftop spot that overlooked the city's glittering skyline. Everything was set. The lighting, the music, the wine selection. She wore a fitted red dress and soft curls. Not too dramatic. Just elegant enough to look like the daughter of a man who should say yes. As they gathered that evening, the atmosphere was light. Her father laughed heartily at a joke her younger brother made. Amara watched him, and for a second, her resolve faltered. He looked so calm, so unaware of what she had planned. Dinner was halfway done when she cleared her throat and stood. Her voice trembled as she raised her wine glass. "I just wanted to say something," she began. "To thank you, Daddy, for being such a strong figure in our lives. But I also want to be honest tonight." Everyone turned. Conversations dropped. Forks paused. Her mother's brow furrowed slightly. "I feel let down," she said, now looking directly at her father. "All my life, I've believed that you would support me in my dreams. And now, at the most important moment of my life, you've pulled back. You say it's caution. I say it's control. Why, Daddy? Why can't you just believe in me?" The silence afterward was deafening. Her father stared at her, eyes misty but unreadable. Her brothers looked from one to the other, confused and tense. Her mother inhaled sharply but said nothing. Finally, Mr. Obina rose from his seat. He didn't speak. He didn't argue. He placed his napkin on the table, nodded once, and walked out of the restaurant. The glass door closed behind him with a quiet finality. Amara's stomach flipped. That wasn't how she'd expected it to go. She imagined tears, maybe a quiet apology, or even a promise. Not silence. Not that heavy, wordless exit. The rest of the dinner was a blur. No one touched dessert. Her mother left early. That night, Amara lay awake, replaying the moment over and over again. Why hadn't he said something? Why hadn't he fought for her dream, or at least defended his choice? The next day came with no calls. The day after that, still nothing. Her brothers texted, asking what that dinner was all about. Her mother sent a single message. "Your father is quiet. I don't know what to say." The silence began to feel like a punishment, like a door slowly creaking closed. Guilt crept in, curling around her like morning fog. But pride held her mouth shut. He should have said something, she kept thinking. He should have explained himself. By the fourth day, Amara scrolled through her father's contact, her thumb hovering above the call button. She didn't press it. Not yet. Something still bristled in her chest, a tangled knot of shame and stubbornness. But what she didn't know was that a truth bigger than both their silences was already unraveling in the shadows quietly, delicately, like a ribbon slipping through old fingers. A truth that would explain everything and change the way she saw her father forever. Amara hadn't spoken to her father in 4 full days, and the quiet was no longer empowering. It was unsettling. Her phone stayed within reach at all times, even during showers. She hoped it would buzz with a message from him, even an emoji. But nothing came. The silence stretched like a rubber band at its limit. She paced at her apartment, sometimes staring out the window at the city lights below, wondering if she had gone too far. Her fiancé, Jide, tiptoed around the subject. He brought her tea, stroked her back in silence, but never said, "You were wrong." Perhaps he was scared she'd snap, or maybe he was just as unsure as she was. That weekend, her older brother, Ikenna, came over with his usual humor. "So you decided to give Daddy an Oscar-worthy ambush?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "I thought we were coming for dinner, not a reality TV showdown." Amara didn't laugh. "I just wanted him to understand how deeply I felt. I didn't mean for it to go like that." Ikenna sat down. "He hasn't left the house since. Just sits in the garden. Not even football on TV can drag him in. That's how I know he's hurt. Deeply." The words landed hard. Mr. Obina wasn't the type to sulk or brood. He was a doer, a fixer. The idea of him sitting quietly in a garden while the world spun on was more disturbing than 100 angry texts. On Sunday, Amara's mother invited her over. "Nothing formal," she said on the phone. "Just lunch. Your father may, or may not be there. She dressed with care, choosing a blouse he had once complimented. She told herself she wasn't going there to apologize, just to talk, perhaps even defend herself further if needed. But her hands trembled as she applied mascara. The house smelled like old memories. Stew bubbling, faint scent of palm oil in the air. She stepped into the sitting room, half expecting to see her father reading his newspaper. But the sofa was empty. Her mother gave her a quiet hug.
"He's in the back," she said.
He's not angry. He's disappointed. There's a difference. Amara swallowed. That word disappointed stung more than angry ever could. She stepped into the backyard where the orange tree still stood. Her father sat on the cane chair beneath it, hands folded across his lap, staring into nothing. He didn't move as she approached. "Daddy," she said softly. He turned his head slowly, meeting her eyes. There was no fire, no fury. Just a quiet sorrow that made her feel like a child again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded, just once, then gestured for her to sit beside him. The silence between them was loaded, not with hostility, but something heavier regret. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, staring at her shoes. "I just wanted you to see how important this wedding is to me." "I know it's important," he said after a while. "But your idea of importance is different from mine. I see a future. You see a day." She looked up, blinking. "But I wanted that day to be special. I wanted to be proud." "You thought pride came from chandeliers and celebrity chefs?" he asked gently. "Amara, my pride is in seeing you happy and secure, not in how Instagram sees your wedding." Her shoulders slumped. Tears pooled in her eyes. "But everyone's watching. Everyone's expecting." He turned toward her now. "And when did everyone start living your life for you?" That question clamped her mouth shut. They sat there, dusk creeping in. Eventually, her mother brought them juice and quietly slipped away. The conversation turned. They spoke of her childhood, of his own wedding to her mother, which happened in the rain under a makeshift tent. "Your uncle fell into a puddle carrying the cake," he said, chuckling. "And your mother still says it was the happiest day of her life." They shared a quiet laugh. For a moment, things felt less broken. But Amara couldn't ignore the ache still lodged in her chest. The wedding, the dream, it still mattered. Even if her approach was wrong, her desire wasn't. And yet, something in her father's eyes told her he wasn't just being stubborn. There was something more. The next week, Amara went over again. This time, her father was indoors, watching an old comedy. They shared a meal, laughed over old stories, but something inside her buzzed with curiosity. The more she thought about it, the more she realized he hadn't refused out of coldness. There had been something oddly protective about his silence. Later that night, she mentioned it to Jide. "Do you think my dad knows something? About us?" Jide looked startled. "Like what?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe something about you. Or maybe something about our finances." He fidgeted. "I mean, your dad did call me last month. Wanted to know if we were taking any loans or financial risks. I told him no, but I was planning to handle a few things quietly. Maybe he found out." Amara's brows shot up. "Handle what?" Jide looked away. "Some old business debt. Nothing serious. I didn't want to stress you with it." Her heart thudded. She felt a chill run through her. Suddenly, her father's refusal, his gentle firmness, the way he had avoided lashing out at dinner, all of it started to form a puzzle. "What if," she whispered, "what if he used the wedding fund for something else? For something good?" The idea bloomed in her chest like a fragile flower. She needed to know. She had to know. The next day, she visited again, pretending to drop off some pastries. Her mother was in the garden. Her father was at the dining table, reading something. She approached cautiously. "Daddy, I want to ask something, and I need you to be honest." He didn't look up. "Always. Did you use the wedding money for something else?" A pause. Then, he slowly folded the paper, set it down, and met her gaze. "Yes." Her breath caught. "Why?" she asked, voice shaking. He sighed deeply. "Because Jide owed people. And I didn't want your marriage starting with threats and secrets." He didn't know I knew, but I did. I cleared it quietly.
"So you two could start fresh."
"So your wedding could be about love, not looming shadows." Amara couldn't speak. Tears spilled from her eyes before she could stop them. She covered her mouth, her heart aching with shame and awe. "You should have told me," she whispered. "You would have stopped me," he replied softly. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. "I thought you didn't care. I thought you didn't believe in me." He held her tight. "I believe in you so much that I let you hate me for a while." And in that moment, all her pride shattered. All the confusion melted away. Her stubborn, quiet, loving father had been protecting her all along. Not from a low-budget wedding, but from a shaky foundation. As she sat there in his arms, the world shifted. Her heart opened. The pain and guilt swirled into something new. Later that night, she curled up with her journal and wrote only one line: "Love doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it whispers and waits." The morning after their emotional talk, Amara awoke with swollen eyes and a sense of softness she hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time since the dinner, her heart felt unclenched. The resentment, the frustration, it all seemed like fog lifting from a long, cold morning. But with clarity came shame, sharp and unforgiving. She had accused him in public, embarrassed him in front of his own family, when all he had done was protect her from a storm she didn't even know was brewing. She sat quietly at her dining table, sipping lukewarm tea. Jide stood by the kitchen sink, silently rinsing a mug, careful not to speak unless spoken to. The air between them was heavy. He had heard every word her father said the night before. "You could have told me," she said suddenly, voice low but direct. Jide turned slowly, towel in hand. "I know. I was trying to fix it. Quietly. I didn't want you to worry." She studied him, really studied him, for the first time in weeks. This wasn't a bad man. Just a scared one. Trying to impress her. Trying to stand tall in front of a woman who had always seemed so sure of herself. But in hiding his troubles, he had invited her father to take his place in protection, and that, unknowingly, had cost her something deep. "I don't blame you," she said. "But we can't build a marriage with secrets. Not like that." Jide exhaled and nodded. "I know. I'm sorry." Their conversation that morning was long.
Raw. Honest.
For the first time, they spoke about debt, savings, wedding expectations, and even the kind of life they both wanted after the vows were said. It was uncomfortable. It was vulnerable. But it was real. Days passed slowly after that. Amara stayed away from her family's house, giving space not just for herself, but for her father too. She didn't want to return with a rushed apology or a box of store-bought forgiveness. No, she wanted to come back with something sincere, thoughtful, restorative. She began writing a letter. The kind with no bullet points, no dramatic flourishes, just her words, unfiltered. Each night, she added a few more lines. Sometimes she scratched whole paragraphs out. It had to be right. Meanwhile, the family group chat had gone quiet. Her brothers posted memes occasionally, but no one dared mention the dinner. Her mother sent a few forwarded prayers, the kind with glittering doves and verses in bold text, but never said anything direct. She knew they were all waiting for resolution, watching her next move. One evening, she visited her mother unannounced. The older woman opened the door and gave her a tight, warm hug like breath being released after days of holding it. "I've been praying you'd come," she whispered, hand resting on Amara's cheek. They sat and talked, woman to woman, not just mother to daughter. Her mother shared stories Amara had never heard before about the early days of marriage, when Obinna was still a civil servant and they had barely enough to eat. How he once sold his radio to pay for baby formula. How she once pawned her wedding ring to cover rent. "It's not the grandeur that matters, baby," her mother said. "It's the grit. The quiet sacrifices. That's what carries love through the dry seasons." Amara held her mother's hand tightly. She understood now. She truly did. The next day, she put on a simple dress and went to her father's house. She didn't bring the letter. She didn't need it anymore. She walked into the living room, heart pounding, to find him playing chess alone. He looked up. "Ah, my champion has returned." She smiled weakly, cheeks already damp. "I don't even know where to start." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Start with the bishop. I've been waiting to lose." They played in silence for several minutes, the clink of wooden pieces the only sound between them. And then, mid-game, Amara spoke. Not with rehearsed lines. Just the truth. "I was wrong. And selfish. I thought you were trying to control me, but all you were doing was carrying my burden." Obinna looked at her, eyes tender. "Sometimes love doesn't look the way we expect." "I see that now," she whispered. He reached across the board and took her hand. "You've always been my treasure. And sometimes, treasures are protected in silence." She choked on a sob, nodded, and squeezed his hand back. Later that evening, the family gathered again, this time in the same living room where they had once shared bedtime stories and birthday cakes. Her brothers were there, lounging in familiar corners, teasing each other with ease. Her mother brought out jollof rice and fried plantains. As they ate, the atmosphere slowly warmed into something new, something hopeful. Then, her father cleared his throat and said, "Your sister has forgiven me, and I've forgiven her. Now, let's celebrate love, not the kind with spotlights, but the kind that endures." There was a collective cheer. Ikenna raised a glass of malt. To silent chess games and smart daughters. Laughter echoed through the room. Amara felt something bloom in her chest like a rose opening at dawn. But that night, lying in bed next to Jide, she asked softly, "Do you still want the big wedding?" He turned to her, brushing hair from her face. "I just want you. If it's a backyard barbecue or a cathedral. I just want a day that reflects us." She smiled. "Then let's plan something beautiful, something real, something we can afford and remember forever." They both agreed to cancel the extravagant plans. No hall with golden staircases. No live performance from imported artists. Instead, they would host it in the family garden under that same orange tree where her father once gave her the truth without raising his voice. But before anything else, Amara had one more thing to do. She sat down one morning and wrote a new invitation list. Not for guests, but for peace. She wrote her father's name at the top, circled it in red, and whispered, "You're my foundation." Jide, watching from the couch, gave her a nod. "You've changed," he said. "I've grown," she corrected, smiling. And indeed she had. In the span of a few tense, humbling weeks, she had learned that love wasn't about glitter or goo. Tor spoke about unity and understanding. Amara leaned her head against her father's shoulder and sighed. He turned slightly and kissed the crown of her head. "Proud of you, my daughter," he whispered. She didn't need a mansion wedding anymore. That moment alone, quiet, warm, sacred, was everything. The decision to host a modest wedding under the orange tree brought a kind of peace Amara didn't know she needed. Her shoulders, once heavy with expectation and ego, felt lighter as the days unfolded. But in the stillness, she began to reflect deeper on her father's choices, his silence, and most of all, his sacrifice. Something still tugged at her thoughts, soft but persistent. Why hadn't he told her? Why did he choose to suffer her public accusation rather than simply say, "I'm using the money to help Jide"? One evening, she found herself in his study, looking through old family albums. It was a quiet space, lined with books and memories. On the shelf was a framed letter, aged and yellowed, but carefully kept. She leaned in to read it. It was addressed to her father, written decades ago by his father Amara's late grandfather. The words trembled with ink and wisdom. "A good father protects even when misunderstood. Let your children be angry, but never abandoned. Let them speak their truth, but never let them drown in it. One day, they will thank you for the silence you endured." Amara's chest tightened. She sat down and traced the edges of the frame, eyes wet. Her father wasn't withholding out of pride. He was following a legacy of quiet strength. She heard footsteps behind her. It was him. "You found Papa's letter," he said softly. She nodded. "I think I understand you now more than ever." Obinna walked in, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't speak for a while. Then he sat beside her. "When I found out about Jide's debts, I didn't know what to do at first. I was angry, disappointed, but I'm also afraid." "Afraid?" she asked, surprised. "Yes," he said. "Afraid that you were marrying someone who couldn't protect you, who would bring trouble to your doorstep." But then I looked at him, and I saw something familiar. I saw myself. Amara tilted her head. "I also had debts," he admitted. "When I married your mother, I was proud. I didn't tell anyone. But my father, your grandfather, paid them off. Quietly. He told me, 'You don't owe me money. You owe me a stable home for your children.'" Her heart clenched. The generational echo of sacrifice was loud now. She could hear it. "So, you did the same for Jide?" He nodded. "Not because I think he's perfect, but because I see in him a man trying to do right. He just needs time. And I'd rather your marriage start on a clean slate than on hidden cracks." She looked at him with so much love, so much reverence, it almost hurt. "I wish I knew. I wish I hadn't embarrassed you that day." He smiled. "I would have done it again, Amara. Take your fire and swallow it whole, because that's what fathers do." She threw her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for loving me even when I was impossible to love." He kissed her temple. "You were never impossible, just overwhelmed and passionate. That passion will serve you if you learn to temper it with listening." In the days that followed, Amara's respect for her father grew into something new. Not just love, not just admiration, but a quiet awe. He was a man who didn't need applause to be good. A man who didn't explain his kindness loudly. A man who chose legacy over validation. She decided to surprise him. One afternoon, while her parents were out, Amara went to the garden. With the help of Jide and her brothers, they decorated the orange tree with soft fairy lights and paper lanterns. Beneath it, they placed a long wooden table, the one her father built years ago, cleaned and polished like new. Her mother gasped when she saw it. Her father stood frozen at the entrance of the backyard, eyes flicking from light to lantern to table. Amara stepped forward. We wanted to honor the man who taught us what love really looks like. She held out a small wooden box. Inside was a watch, simple, classic, engraved with the words, "Thank you for your silence." Her father blinked, speechless. His lips trembled, but he said nothing. He simply opened his arms, and the entire family rushed into a group hug that would have lasted forever. That evening, they shared stories under the lights. Stories of childhood, of failures, of victories, and of moments that could have broken them but didn't. They laughed about the time Amara tried to cook rice at age 10 and serve it half raw. Or when her brother wore mismatched shoes to school because her father was too sleepy to notice. I still get teased for that. Ikenna grinned. And you'll keep getting teased, their father replied, chuckling. Amara sat quietly for a moment, looking around. Everything she had once wanted in chandeliers and ballrooms was right here, wrapped in voices, laughter, and light. But the surprises weren't over. 2 weeks before the wedding, Jide brought her an envelope. "Your dad gave me this before I proposed," he said, scratching the back of his neck. Amara opened it. Inside was a letter in her father's handwriting. "If you marry her, you marry us. This family. It's legacy. It's love. We are not perfect, but we are rooted. Protect her, even when she fights you. Listen to her, even when she doesn't make sense. She is my life's greatest gift. Handle her with care." Tears filled her eyes. "He gave you this before I even said yes?" Jide nodded. "He made me swear I wouldn't read it aloud unless you forgave him." She laughed through her tears. What a man! Her father hadn't just protected her from Jide's mistakes, he had also helped Jide grow into a better man. The kind who understood transparency. The kind who didn't hide from conflict. The kind who honored her family as his own. On the morning of the wedding, the sky was gentle. No rain. No harsh sun. Just a soft golden hue bathing the garden. Amara wore a simple white dress, fitted at the waist, with lace sleeves that brushed her skin like whispers. Her father walked her down the aisle just 20 paces between the house and the altar under the orange tree. But to her it felt like walking through time. He leaned in and said, "You are the woman I prayed for. Now go be the wife you were raised to be." She nodded, eyes glistening. "And you are the father I didn't deserve." Jide waited at the altar, teary-eyed. Their vows weren't long. They didn't need to be. Every word was anchored in weeks of truth, vulnerability, and love forged in quiet spaces. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the cheer that erupted from their family would have shaken the city. Later, as music played and guests danced barefoot in the grass, Amara sat with her father, both watching the glow of paper lanterns above them. "Daddy," she said, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for showing me that love doesn't have to be loud to be real." He chuckled softly. "Remember when you used to think the louder someone clapped, the more they loved you?" She laughed. "Yes. And I'd beg you to clap louder at school plays." He grinned. "Now I know you don't need applause. You just needed understanding." And she had it now, in full. The days after the wedding felt like living in a warm dream. There was no grand hotel or exotic island for their honeymoon. Instead, Amara and Jide spent the first week of marriage in a quiet cabin near Obudu, surrounded by thick green hills, long walks, and the sound of their laughter echoing in a place where no one asked for photo ops or hashtags. It was perfect, not because everything was flawless, but because it was real. Every moment, every soft word, every shared silence unfiltered, unforced. Amara finally understood what her father meant when he said, "A day doesn't build a marriage. Every day does." On their third night, as they sat around a bonfire crackling under the stars, Jide turned to her and said, "I've never felt this peaceful." She smiled. "Me neither. I used to think peace came after achievement, after approval. But I was chasing noise." He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "And now you know where peace really lives." "In understanding," she whispered. When they returned to the city, it wasn't the traffic or the buzz of billboards that caught her attention. It was the small things of children laughing as they walked from school, market women joking loudly as they arranged tomatoes, a mechanic wiping sweat off his brow with the corner of his shirt. Life was happening as usual, but Amara saw it differently now through the lens of grounded joy. One afternoon, she stopped by her parents' house. Not to say anything specific, just to sit, to breathe the air of where it all began. Her mother welcomed her with a steaming bowl of yam porridge, and her father sat beside her in his wrapper, as though no storm had ever passed between them. They watched a family game show on TV. Amara found herself laughing with him at silly answers and rolling her eyes when he shouted answers before contestants did. "Daddy," she said between laughter, "you should go on that show one day." He chuckled. "Only if you're on my team. Your mother will disqualify us before we even start." She smiled and rested her head on his shoulder again. That small action, once foreign and tight with tension, had now become a regular gesture of affection. Comfortable. Whole. Later that week, Amara visited the garden again. The orange tree stood tall and proud, lantern strings still swaying faintly in the breeze. She touched its bark gently, like greeting an old friend. And that's when she decided. She wanted to do more than just remember this chapter. She wanted to immortalize it. So she started writing. Not a social media post, not a wedding vlog, but a book. A collection of letters to her future daughter. Each letter told a story. Of pride. Of misunderstanding. Of forgiveness. Of the man who taught her that silence can be love, and that confrontation doesn't always bring clarity sometimes. It only buries the truth. She titled the collection, "The Wedding That Saved Me." Word spread. People began requesting excerpts. Her siblings shared it with their friends. Even her mother beamed with pride when she printed the first mock cover. But her father, he just held the pages silently and said, "You listened. That's all I ever prayed for." As the weeks rolled into months, Amara's marriage blossomed not because they avoided storms, but because they knew how to walk through them together. She and Jide had their arguments, sure. But now, their voices didn't rise as quickly. Their silences weren't weapons. They learned to pause, reflect, and return not with fire, but with grace. One evening, they hosted a small dinner in their apartment. Her father sat across from her, slicing roasted chicken while teasing her about always forgetting to season gizzards properly. "Some wife you are," he laughed. "Some father you are," she replied, giggling, "always comparing my cooking to mummies." "Then maybe I'll just move in here," he teased. The room erupted with laughter. But amid the joy, Amara noticed her younger cousin sitting quietly in a corner, scrolling her phone, shoulders tense. She reminded Amara of herself months ago, restless, proud, unsure where love ended and control began. After dinner, she sat beside the girl. "You okay?" "I don't think my dad gets me," her cousin murmured. "He's always acting like I'm wrong, like I don't know what I want." Amara placed a gentle hand over hers. "Maybe he's just scared. Sometimes, silence isn't disapproval, it's protection." Her cousin blinked at her. "How do you know?" Amara looked over at her father, who was now arguing about football with Jide. Because I once made the mistake of yelling at a man who had just saved my future. And he let me yell, without defending himself. There was a long pause. Then the girl whispered, "That's deep." Amara smiled. Love usually is. In the months that followed, Amara and her father's bond became even stronger. They scheduled monthly coffee dates, sometimes in silence, sometimes full of jokes. She helped him organize old files. He helped her build her new blog series. He even recorded a short audio with her for her first podcast titled, "The Wedding That Wasn't Grand But Gave Me Everything." It went viral within hours. People from around the world messaged her thanking her for the story, for the lessons, for reminding them that love isn't always noisy and that healing doesn't have to come with fanfare. One message stood out. "I haven't spoken to my dad in 6 years. After watching your story, I called him. We talked for 2 hours. Thank you for giving us that chance." Amara read it aloud to her father. He nodded, eyes moist. "You see," he said, "sometimes our biggest blessings come from our deepest pain." She nodded. "And from the people we misunderstood the most." As the first anniversary of their wedding approached, Amara returned to the orange tree with Jide. They brought a picnic basket and a Bluetooth speaker playing soft high-life music. She leaned against him, eyes closed, breeze dancing through her hair. "I want our children to know all of this one day," she said. "Not the wedding, the lessons." He kissed her forehead. "Then they'll be rich in wisdom, because their mother lived it." She reached into her bag and pulled out a printed copy of her book, now officially published. On the first page, it read, "For my father, who said the most by saying the least, and for every daughter learning that love wears many faces."
Moral lesson.
Miscommunication can fracture even the strongest bonds, but love, when rooted in kindness and clarity, always finds its way back home. Amara's journey reminds us that true understanding requires humility, and sometimes the silence we misinterpret is the deepest form of protection. Whether you're a parent or a child, a partner or a sibling, pause, listen, speak with grace, and trust in love's quiet power. You've got this. If you love this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. Drop your thoughts and lessons in the comment section below. Your voice matters here. Thank you for watching.